My relationship with food has never been something that I would like to talk about because I've just felt like confused around eating and nutrition, and I've never really felt like I'm particularly healthy or my eating habits are something that I would ever recommend to another person. And I've always been lazy with food and eating as well. I just it just seemed like this overwhelming thing to even consider educating myself properly around food. But I'm at a point now where it just seems really simple to me. So I thought I'd share some insights just from my current perspective. It's just a video journal. This is not intended to be advice or guidance. I'm just expressing some stuff. One thing that I've changed pretty dramatically is I've adopted what they call intermittent fasting, which is just simply you restrict your eating to a smaller window than just like all the time. So I was looking into a guy called Dr. Ian Smith, and he said that he calls it the feeding window, I think, can be like 12 hours, and you can factor in your sleep as well. So you sleep for 8 hours and you've just got to not eat for 4 hours, and then you've done your fasting period. And there's heaps of benefits, like the studies are stacking up in favor of this like restricted eating time. Don't restrict what you like I'm really hyper aware of like eating disorders, so I'm always scared of talking about nutrition as well, especially when I'm talking about restricting your eating. But like you can still eat an adequate amount of calories and food and get the nutrients that you need and do this fasting. And one of the benefits that the studies keep coming up with is if you are storing fat on top of fat on top of fat, then it's never being what they call recycled. And I'm not even going to begin to pretend that I understand the science behind it, but I can feel the difference when I'm burning old fat and storing new fat, which is what I understand my body is now doing, because it has to burn fat when I'm in that fasting period because there's no new energy source. This could be the most boring thing in the world, but it's kind of important, and I think people would be curious. And a thing that's automatically happening since I've been fasting, just for the mornings, I just fast in the mornings, is when I think about my first meal, I cannot look at junk food the same way. Like if it's like this is the first thing that you're going to put in your body, you're so hungry, you're craving nutrients, like you just naturally gravitate towards like vegetables and good stuff. Like this morning all I wanted was govindas, and that's like the Hare Krishna food that they sell in Burley Heads, and it's great value, cheap, and you get like really nutritious vegetarian meals. And like I still eat meat and everything, and like I'm not particularly interested in any fad or like extreme in dieting, but like I just gravitate towards like things that I know are going to fuel my body with everything that it needs, not just like a bunch of salt, sugar and fat, which is what it craves. And when you're just feeding it whatever it wants all the time and you don't have any discipline, I go straight for the salt, sugar and fat. Not so much the sugar, but I go for the fats and the salts, like meaty burgers and things like that when I'm in lazy mode. But there's something to that I wanted to share as well, because doing the gym and fitness are absolute lie that we need to take any kinds of supplements. Like all of the supplements that personal trainers and everybody have recommended to me, I've kind of looked into it and come to the conclusions that like these BCAAs, which is like your proteins basically, It's in fucking everything. Like, you don't need to take an overpriced supplement to get that. You don't need any protein powder at all. Like, just eat food. The food's going to be better for you. It's going to have like all of the micro and macronutrients in it as well. Like, you're going to get such a better workout eating real food and getting vitamins and minerals out of it, as well as, you know, the protein's in fucking everything, man. And I also tried that creatine, which is like massive in the bodybuilding world for like gaining heaps of muscle, and I was researching that while I was experiencing it and reflecting on what I could feel inside my own body. And it's like, it makes you retain heaps of fluid, like heaps of water, and like, I feel like all it does really for people who are trying to get in shape, and they're like, this might not be true for everyone. There might be like proper bodybuilders out there who use these things effectively, but I think for the average person who just wants to get in shape, it just makes you keep your weight on, and it makes you bloated and look like you're not getting anywhere, which like would fuel the desire to go out and buy more supplements, because you need to have more supplements to get more fitness, to do more gym. Like, this vicious cycle of like thinking that something outside yourself is going to help you. And on top of that, it was either, I don't think it was the Dr. Ian, that first guy that I mentioned. There was another doctor that I was listening to, and he was saying that if there's an overabundance of all of these supplements, or the BCAAs, for example, which is like massive, like a really like well-known promoted supplement is the BCAAs. It's just like simple proteins that your muscles need to recover and grow and build. But he said, like, if you have an overabundance of those because you're taking all these supplements, then it triggers off a response in your body that is actually not beneficial to you in the long run. Like, you want to put your body in more of a scarcity state so that it learns to be more efficient. And that's what the fasting does as well. That guy also spoke about fasting, and he takes it to the extreme of only eating one meal a day, because there's this whole recycling process that, like I said, I'm not going to begin to pretend to understand. But yeah, all these insights, like listening to these new perspectives, has made me experiment with like, okay, maybe like pumping myself full of like calories, protein, and supplements isn't actually the answer. Maybe just fasting and burning some of this like old fat and eating more food, but more nutritious food, and yeah, just like within that window of time, so that like I'm giving my body a chance to be in scarcity and in abundance, and the different benefits that come with that. Like I say, I'm not going to begin to pretend to understand, but I understood enough to sort of apply it and see how it feels and things. And the energy levels and everything, like, it could be because I'm just not going for the McDonald's and the KFC, but I think a lot of it is the fasting and that recycling process, whatever's going on, getting rid of all the old fats that have just been like, I don't even know what goes on with them, like full of toxins and shit. Like when you burn the old fats, all the toxins that are involved are also burned out of there, and then you've got fresh new fats that you're storing when you have your surplus of calories again. All these things, like, there's so much interesting stuff. And yeah, I actually feel healthy, and I feel like this is sustainable for the first time in my life. Like I've tried like eating vegan, and I've tried eating like a really fruit based diet, like heaps of fruits, because fruit's really easy to digest and it's full of like good nutrients as well. I've tried the whole like just mainly eat like paleo, almost like just protein, all these things. But now landing in this place where I just eat kind of what I want, but looking for what I call living foods first. So mostly like plant-based, but like don't limit yourself to like no animal products. And it's like, I know there's ethical stuff and there's ecological stuff that goes along with like our diet choices, but I'm just like, let's figure out my body first and figure out how to optimize myself and be healthy. And then yeah, it's like, through all the years of like all the righteous vegans preaching at me and shit and trying veganism and stuff and all these unsustainable diets, I'm probably have a more ecologically sound diet now, which I mean, like, I'm probably eating better for the planet now because I'm eating more plant-based foods without the pressure on myself than all the times where I tried to force myself to eat like a really righteous diet and it all fell apart and I went back to old habits and probably ate heaps more McDonald's and KFC and garbage food that's just bad for me, bad for the community, bad for the planet and all that stuff. Like, I've learned over and over again that like finding your own way to stuff and really having a strong understanding of why it's good for you and why it's good for the world and really getting your own concepts in place is so much more powerful than just doing stuff because you know you should, because somebody else is like virtual signaling to you that this is the appropriate way to live your life and like you should do this, you should do that. It never works for very long because the motivation is, it's not real, it's not coming from within you, it's coming from external sources, and those external sources, they're not present all the time. Like, you don't, like, a preachy vegan might attack you for the way that you live your life, but then where are they tomorrow and the next day and the next day? They're just like going around shitting on everybody's lifestyle and disappearing into the night. Like, and again, like, sometimes I come across as judgy in these videos, and I've noticed that a lot lately. Like, I'm kind of just talking as it's coming to my mind, and then people that are watching are like identifying with these positions and they're going like, oh, Kai thinks less of me or something, or like taking it personally. But I'm just like, this is just a snapshot in the moment of what's going on in my awareness, and like, that's a scary thing to think about. Like, everything could be taken, like, you could take a line out of one of these journals and be like, this is Kai's beliefs, and like, that's what's kind of happening to Joe Rogan at the moment. Like, this massive like smear campaign against his name, just looking for every possible way to make him look really bad because he's crossed the line with like spreading too much what they're claiming is misinformation, but depends who you ask. Like, and yeah, just, he has too much freedom in his free speech, so we need to put a stop to this. Totally different subject, but worth considering as well. And I guess that's why I've always avoided talking about anything, and like anything that's got too much gravity, like talking about nutrition and diet and stuff. Like, I don't want somebody to take something that I say from here and go, Kai said don't eat any food, and then they get sick or they develop an eating disorder or something. But I really want to let go of that control and that anxiety around like trying to just avoid everything. It's just some like people walking out of the bushes. I think they've been fishing. Doesn't seem like a very good place to go fishing. But yeah, I'm trying to just like talk about things as candidly and authentically as I possibly can, while balancing that with the knowledge that we live in a world where everybody's pouncing on the slightest thing that they disagree with, and like just cancel culture and censorship and everything. It would be a totally different journal if this happened like 10 years ago, before the internet kind of got divided into two sides on every possible topic that you can imagine. I'd probably speak far more freely, but I've just got that anxiety in the back of my mind. It's not like controlling me, but it's like I'm aware, like just hyper aware of like being careful about what I talk about, and slowly like letting that go and just, okay, let's talk about nutrition. Let's talk about stuff that I don't understand. I don't need to be an expert on it. But like right as I'm ready to begin to do that, I'm seeing like Joe Rogan, who is like the guy that does that, the number one guy in the world who talks about stuff like with that kind of level of freedom that I'm describing, just get absolutely dragged through the coals for not knowing everything. Like that's essentially what's happening. Like, oh, he should know better, he should this, he should that. But then who the fuck is anybody who's criticizing him? Like, how do they know everything? How are they so sure of their own positions and stuff? And that's what frustrates me. Like, there needs to be space in this world for us to explore. We can't just like be this like rigid black and white, like no nuance society where like we can't say anything wrong, or like we need the space to make mistakes, and it can't cost us our right to participate, you know? Like, it's just, and I do this quietly. Like, I explore everything, and I guess most of us are like, we're just quietly questioning everything because we don't want to stick our neck out. But if you are feeling that the world is just like sort of stamping out that freedom to explore, the one thing that I've noticed you can do with all the censorship and everything that's going on in the world is you can talk about the censorship. They can't censor the discussion around the censorship yet, or they haven't yet. So when something like Joe Rogan potentially having like dozens of episodes of his podcast deplatformed happens, yeah, sure, they're censoring that, but then we have the opportunity to create an even bigger spectacle or an even bigger discussion around what they're doing. Like, so all of a sudden millions or thousands maybe, like just heaps of people are posting their own content and opinions and sharing like their interpretation of the censorship. And I feel like you kind of get to go meta in that regard. And if we did that more often and we took this conversation like to that meta level where we're talking about the process that's actually taking place, and talk about like, we want the freedom to explore and the freedom to express ourselves, the freedom to be wrong, the freedom to, you know, subscribe to things that could be incorrect in the grand scheme of things, like what is being labeled as misinformation. Like, maybe you're wrong, like who knows? And I'm sure there's like, I see all the preachy like scientists and public figures that are like, we are the experts, we have self-proclaimed knowers of everything, and all of this new stuff that's occurring in our lifetimes, we've already figured it out, we are positive that we have the correct answers. It's like, yeah, I don't care. Like, it's not, to me it's not about that. It's not about this, like, and it's probably not about that to most people. It's not this like need to have these two sides, like Joe Rogan's the crazy guy with the misinformation, and over on the other side, in the other corner, we have truth, and they're going to fight to the death. It's like, no, truth, or like your version of the truth, can exist as much as it wants. Just let other people's perspectives and opinions exist as well. And the only reason that it's such a threat is because more people are subscribing to that. By definition, like, you're the minority. Like, you're the ones, if like all these people that are slamming Joe Rogan right now, they're the minority. Like, so there's more people that believe that the truth is that the media is lying to us, big pharmaceutical companies are capitalizing on this situation and making a huge profit that could potentially lead to all kinds of unforeseen consequences in the future. There's so much stuff here. And we don't need to understand it all, but we do need to be able to have a conversation around it. And it's the same with like anything. And yeah, it's an interesting way to conclude this video. Like, I was talking about nutrition and exercise and things. And I guess what triggered off all these insights is like, I don't know what I'm talking about, so I'm kind of concerned that that's a problem in some way. But I guess the big concern with somebody like Joe Rogan is he has so much influence, and I think it was something like 9 times CNN or even more, and a lot of people are listening to that podcast and just like taking it as an authority on the truth, you know, like they're not doing their own critical thinking. That's kind of what the other side is saying. Like, he has so much influence and everybody's just consuming this information, and they don't have the faculties to be able to disseminate the truth from the lies. But even that I still disagree with. I don't disagree that people might not be using their critical thinking to decide for themselves. They might just be like consuming Joe Rogan stuff and thinking that everything he says and everything that his guests say is absolutely right. First of all, I absolutely doubt it. Like, there'll be varying degrees of people who consume the information at face value and just agree with it. My point is that, and even this, like when I start to get scattered in my thinking, I'm like, oh, now you don't know what you're talking about even more. Like, you're more of a crazy person or whatever. But I just want the freedom to be able to do that. I just want the freedom to be able to not know. But yeah, what I was going to say is, like, I don't care if people are consuming the wrong narrative and they are getting confused. Like, that's even their right. Like, but I do understand that information is kind of being weaponized in a way, and it's all, even discussing this is like kind of being lured into the game, and like you become a part of it, and then we're just like, as much as I said, it's, you can still talk about the censorship and go meta. Like, how many levels are we going to go meta before we remember that the issue that we were talking about was just the freedom to be able to express ourselves and explore and be right, be wrong, who cares? Like, let's just be. And maybe that's why somebody like Joe has so much influence, because he represents that. He's actually done that, and he hasn't been afraid. He's been willing to face everything that might come as a result of that freedom to explore. And for a long time it worked really well for him, and now his freedom has become too threatening. So like, it's kind of disheartening, because it's like what I'm striving towards, to be more free and to be able to express myself and explore, is being shut down before my eyes. And how many other people are witnessing that and experiencing it in that same way, like watching as the world is just tightening its grip, like, or not the world, but like these fucking do-gooders that think they get to choose how the world is shaped. It's just getting so constricted, and like, we're all watching anybody that's like strays from the path or does things a little bit differently or questions anything or has any independent thoughts, just watching them get strangled to death in front of us. Like, what is the next generation gonna do, man? Like, you're gonna kill creativity, you're gonna kill, like, free thinking and independent thought, and no one's going to question anything. And you don't understand the implications of this if you are like really for all this censorship and fact checking and shit, because eventually it's going to get really fucking myopic. It's going to get really like one-tracked mind, and even to the point where the stuff that it's going to eat itself, because no one's going to be able to question anything. So whenever there's a really bad idea that's introduced into society, it's just going to become a part of society, and that's going to happen again and again, faster and faster. Have you ever seen the movie Idiocracy, where the guy accidentally goes to the future and he turns out to be the smartest person in the world because everyone's just completely devolved into idiots? That's why it's called Idiocracy. Like, that's what will happen if we don't question things and we don't check shit out, and we just go with this lowest common denominator society where, like, it's everything's just dumbed down and spoon fed to us, and we just supposed to accept it, and anybody that questions anything gets fucking assassinated politically. Like, you're gonna end up with a really fucking shit society. Like, it's gonna be so boring. And you know, all of those people that are watching all this stuff unfold and feeling that freedom die in front of them and feeling that freedom die inside them as a result, like, you think it's bad now, it's only going to get worse. It's only going to be like, and that feeling's not going to go away. That feeling of, like, the desire for that freedom, the desire for the freedom to explore and express and be wrong and fuck shit up, like, you're always going to have that inside you, but it's just going to get harder and harder to have any space to explore it. Like, it's just going to be this dull ache in the back of your heart that you maybe even one day we'll forget what it is. We'll just go, man, I wish there was more to life. But I guess I should just be happy with everything the way that it is, because we have a government that loves us, and big conglomerate multinational organizations that make the world run smoothly for us, and we just get to live in this virtual world where everything's fantastic, so we don't even have to care about the deteriorating health of our physical bodies. Maybe we don't even have physical bodies anymore because we've just sold our souls quite literally to big AI and tech companies that have turned us into some kind of hybrid droid fucking things. Like, I know that gets really wild and wacky, but that's what I want to be able to say on the internet without being accused of anything. Like, I'm trying to tell you, like, this is my video journal. It's not intended to be advice or guidance. I'm just expressing what I'm thinking and feeling in the present moment. I would like to continue to do that, please. If you would like me to continue to do that, please share these videos with others who may feel similarly. Subscribe if you haven't already. Leave your comments down below. And yeah, just do whatever you can to continue to keep the spirit of humanity alive. What a wild ending.